This evening, I just thought we can share a few thoughts in the book of Exodus, which is the book that we are doing our daily readings. If we look at the children of Israel and the events that happened, it's quite fascinating if we compare them with what's happening to us now. So I'm not going to present, but I'm going to talk to you. If we look at the whole book in general and everything that happened, we first see some of the things that resonate with us. And as we share some thoughts, I want us to look at it from that perspective. Firstly, were the children of Israel excited to leave Egypt? Well, the short answer would be yes. Many were excited. When God delivered Israel from Egypt, they experienced joy, relief, and awe at God's power because they were in captivity for a long time. And in Exodus 12:33, we read, the Egyptians urged Israel to leave quickly. And in order to send them out of the land quickly, the Egyptians urged the people on. This shows that the departure happened quickly, creating a sense of expectation, and they also wanted to leave. In Psalm 105 and verse 43, we read a supporting verse which says, he brought, and this is God, he brought forth his people with rejoicing. Again, coming back to the book of Exodus, in chapter 14, this time verses 13 and 14. This is now Moses talking to the children of Israel. The message that he had received from God. But Moses told the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the Lord's salvation, which he will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. You need to be calm. For as much as they were excited, they were relieved. There was an uncertainty of what was going to happen along the way. Obviously, they would have been glad to be freed from slavery. And before they were released, they had just witnessed miracles, the plagues, God's protection, which created belief and excitement. So they would have left with confidence. But as we go down with this fascinating story, we see that this excitement did not last that long. Shortly after leaving, they complained about the journey. Exodus 15, verse 24, we read verses 22 to 24. We read that, then Moses led Israel from the Red Sea, and they went out into the desert of Shur. For 3 days they walked in the desert without finding water. And when they came to Marah, they could not drink the water there because it was bitter. This is why it was called or named Marah. So the people grumbled. They went against Moses, saying, "What are we going to drink?" And again, the next chapter, chapter 16, from verses 1 to 3, we read, "The whole Israelite community set out from Elim and came to the desert of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai, on the 15th day of the second month after they had come out of Egypt." So, using our days, on the 15th day of the second month, which is like 45 days, in the desert, the whole community grumbled against Moses and Aaron. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt. There we sat around pots of meat and ate all the food we wanted. But you have brought us out into the desert to starve this entire assembly to death." Already we can see that their faith was tested. That initial joy was overshadowed by fear and discomfort. Did these children of Israel know where they were going? It's a yes and no. They did not know the exact destination or route. And we read again in Exodus, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them along the road through the land of the Philistines, though it was shorter. For God said, if the people face war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the way of the wilderness. They set out from Succoth and camped at Etham on the edge of the wilderness. And the Lord went before them in a pillar of cloud to guide their way by day, and in a pillar of fire to give them light by night, so that they could travel by day and night. Neither the pillar of cloud by day nor the pillar of fire by night left its place before the people. Now, these verses are clearly telling us that God was always with them. Where were they going? They knew that God had promised a land flowing with milk and honey. Exodus 3, verse 8. But they did not know how to get there. They did not have the map or route, but God Himself guided them day by day, day and night. Now, what God was trying to tell them was, be still and know that I'm God. I'm here. I am present. Moses also did not independently plan the journey. He followed God's lead, pillar of cloud and fire. So what did they know? They knew that they were going to the promised land, the land sworn to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. What didn't they know? They didn't know how the journey was planned. They didn't know the distance. They didn't know the time they were going to get there. They didn't know what they were going to face along the way and the specific route. So their journey was one of faith and not anticipation. If we look at this, the above, which I just said, what does that mean to us? Just like Israel, we may be excited when our relationship with God begins and it shapes up. We've got new developments. We are happy. We are fired up. But we often don't know the full path ahead. Again, like the children of Israel, God leads us step by step. We might have a view of the full blueprint, but we go day by day and night by night, similar to how they were going. In Proverbs, then encourages us or motivates us. Proverbs 3, verses 5 and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. Be not wise in your own eyes. Fear the Lord and turn away from evil. In the New Testament, in 2 Corinthians 5, verse 7, we read, for we walk by faith, not by sight. Israel's physical journey mirrors our spiritual journey today. Excitement mixed with the unknown, but we need to understand that God is always that cloud that is present with us at any given time. So they went into the wilderness. This is the route they took. What does it represent? There we can see it was a time of transition. It was a time of testing, and it was a time of transformation. So the journey they took reflects the spiritual journey that believers are taking today. God leads us even when we do not know the way. That's why we need to be calm in that uncertainty. Of course, every day we face new challenges. But like what God said to the children of Israel in Exodus 13:21, and the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud, and by night in a pillar of fire. It is supported in Psalm 32, verse 8. I will instruct you and teach you the way you should go. I will give you counsel and watch over you. This is an NIV translation, and King James says it nicely. I will instruct thee and teach thee in the way which thou shalt go. I will guide thee with mine eyes. If somebody is watching you and you are falling into a pit, they will guide you. This is what God is trying to say. So God is giving us comfort to say you are safe. Be still, be calm. I know there's so many challenges happening, but I am here with you. I'll walk the journey with you. I'll provide for you. And we see all these events unfolding. God provides in time of need. When he was leading the children of Israel from Egypt, in Exodus 16, verses 4 and 5, then the Lord said to Moses, "Behold, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Each day the people are to go out and gather enough for that day. In this way, I will test whether or not they will follow my instructions." And in verse 5 of Exodus 16, it reads, "Then on the sixth day, when they prepare what they bring in, it will be twice as much as they gather on the other days." So the first 5 days, they are told, just take what is enough for you. And on the sixth day, to see how God is structured and planned, they must take a double portion. Again, all this boils down to following instruction. Follow my commands and everything will go accordingly. So why were they taking a double portion? Show you all away. On the seventh day, it was the day of the Sabbath and Sabbath preparation. So gathering a double portion would mean that on the seventh day, they do not have to go and fetch the portion for the day. This is how God works, and that should give us peace of mind and comfort. And in 2 Corinthians chapter 8, verse 15, Paul quotes this manna story, and he says, "He that had gathered much had nothing over, and he that had gathered little had no lack." This directly reflects to that Exodus and God's provision. So God knows our needs, and God knows the exact portions that we require. And again, it was about the principle of the instruction that he was establishing. We read in Genesis 2, verses 2 and 3. "And by the seventh day, God had finished the work he had been doing. So on that day, he rested from all his work. Then God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because on that day he rested from all the work of creation that he had accomplished." So God rests on the seventh day, which is the foundation for the Sabbath principle. And the Israelites were just reconstructing it in the manna's instruction. Also, just to support this, in Leviticus 25, verses 20 to 22, not only were they given a portion for the day, but in Leviticus, we see that they were given portions for years. God promises a triple crop in the sixth year so Israel can rest during the land Sabbath. And it reads, I read from verse 18, follow my decrees and be careful to obey my laws, and you will live safely in the land. Then the land will yield its fruit, and you will eat your fill and live there in safety. You may ask, what will we eat in the seventh year if we do not plant or harvest our crops? I will send you such a blessing, and this is God now, in the sixth year, that the land will yield enough for 3 years. While you plant during the 8th year, you will eat from the old crop and will continue to eat from it until the harvest of the 9th year comes in. So here, it is more about instruction and the providence of God and Him knowing what we need. So God is saying, be still and know that I'm here. I am present. I will give you what you need, not what you want. But there is instruction. So obedience to God's daily instruction was part of those conditions. If we go back to Exodus 15, verse 26, he said to them, if you listen carefully to the Lord, your God, and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all the decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals. Now, this reminder is not a reminder to generations that had not seen what happened. These were the exact people that experienced the miracles, that saw the Egyptians getting sick. It would have been, and it should be easy to follow this instruction in this instance. We read about following instruction as part of the commandments from Exodus. They are told, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. That's why the 6 days. In Philippians 4, verse 19, we read, but my God shall supply all your needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. So, like manna in the desert, God knows and provides exactly what we need, not always what we want. And this proves that every resource ultimately comes from him. So, what happened in the wilderness? Wilderness was a testing ground, and it reveals what's in our hearts, the real us, what's in our minds. In Deuteronomy 8, verse 2, verses 1 and 2, we read, be careful to follow the command I am giving you today, so that you may live and increase and may enter and possess the land the Lord promised on the oath to your ancestors. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness these 40 years to humble and test you in order to know what was in your minds, whether or not you would keep his commands. James supports what Deuteronomy is saying in James chapter 1, verses 2 to 4. Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. And verse 5, it says, if any of you lack wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously or without finding fault, and it will be given to you. It is part of the commandment that is being echoed there. And again, God is looking at it holistically to say, I will give you everything. You shouldn't worry. You should be still because I'm here, I'm present. And now the wilderness exposes these attitudes, the fears, the hidden weaknesses. God doesn't test us to destroy us, but to develop us. God doesn't only provide material, He provides wisdom as well. God fights for us when we can't fight for ourselves. In Exodus 14, verse 14, we read, the Lord shall fight for you, and you shall hold your peace. And Romans says, if God be for us, who can be against us? Israel first faced impossible battles. We know the Red Sea situation. We know the Amalekites. But with God's presence and when He intervened, everything worked accordingly. What do we need to do then? And the lessons that we learn from the Israelites, we must just trust and obey. God gives purpose at all times. And part of it was in the wilderness. Exodus 19, verses 5 to 6. Now, if you obey me fully and keep my command, my covenant, then out of all nations, you will be my treasured possession. For there the whole earth is mine. You will be for me a kingdom of priests and holy nation. These are the words you are to speak to the Israelites. In 1 Peter 2, verse 9, we read a supporting verse which says, you are the chosen generation, a royal priesthood. So what happened in the wilderness? Israel discovered identity and purpose, not in Egypt or in Canaan, but in the wilderness. Sometimes God uses these hard times to show you who you really are in Him. So the wilderness was not the final destination, it was preparation. If we then look at a comparison between what happened with Moses, the children of Israel, and even Jesus and us, There is so many lessons that we can draw from there that will help us grow and understand God better and more, and then we'll be able to make rational decisions because we are well informed. The wilderness was a place of like divine construction. If we look at Moses in the wilderness, spent 40 years before leading the children of Israel. He later led Israel for another 40 years in the wilderness, where the nation was shaped into God's people. If we come into the New Testament with Jesus in the wilderness, he spent 40 days in the wilderness, fasting and preparing for his ministry. Then in Matthew 4, verse 1, we read, "Then was Jesus led up of the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted of the devil." If we look at ourselves today, we do have our wilderness episodes, time of waiting, unknowns, where God is actually constructing us. We just need to be calm in this time of uncertainty because God is always present. The wilderness teaches us so many things. It teaches us faith and obedience. It teaches us dependence on God. It teaches us how to manage circumstances and to understand that God is our true provider. In the interest of time, I will wrap up for your comments. If we look at the book of Exodus from chapter 6 right to the end of it, the core issue is not merely escaping from Egypt, but the assurance of God's continuing presence with his people, God with us. Israel can be delivered on face value and still be undone inwardly if God does not go with them. This is why in Exodus 33, Moses requested for a petition. He said, "Do not send us without your presence." And what does God do? He answers by revealing the basis on which his presence can remain among a sinful people: his name, his character, and his covenant. So this is the moral foundation which takes us back to chapter 6, where God gives assurance in chapter 6 from verses 6 to 9, where he says, "Therefore say to the Israelites, I am the Lord, I am God. And that's where he gives the 7 I wills. I will bring you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will free you from being slaves to them. I will redeem you with an outstretched arm, with the mighty acts of judgment. I will take you as my own people. I will be your God. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God, who brought you out from under the yoke of the Egyptians. I will bring you to the land I swore with uplifted hand to give to Abraham, Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to you as a possession. I am the Lord. Now, if we go to the last book of Exodus, which is chapter 40, we see the glory of God, which should give us comfort to stay calm in the time of uncertainty, because God is in control. I'm going to read from verse 34 to 38, 4 verses. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during all their travels. So we can see here something very interesting, that God was in control. God was present at all times. God was giving direction when they should move, what they should do, when and how.